a special surprise edition of What's Under the Bed. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. You may be asking, why are there posters for E.T. on a horror chat show? I'll tell you why. The first time Elliot spots E.T. in the shed at night, he scares the bejesus out of you. That's why. And here at What's Under the Bed, we like to explore those original childhood fears that last a lifetime. But Dax, sure E.T., why now? Friday, June 11th, 1982. Exactly 40 years ago from when this episode airs, the little space hobgoblin called E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, was let loose on the world. It's June 11th, 2022, and the 40-year anniversary of E.T. In celebration, we have a special surprise interview for all our What's Under the Bed fans. Today, we will talk to a legendary Scream Queen, the star of the Howling, Cujo, Critters, and E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. I am proud to bring you my interview with Dee Wallace. Enjoy! My guest today is the iconic actress and Scream Queen, Dee Wallace. She has more than 250 credits and worked with filmmakers like Wes Craven, Blake Edwards, Steven Spielberg, Teague, Peter Jackson, Ty West, Rob Zombie, and recent guest on What's Under the Bed, the great Joe Dante. Dee is also a best-selling author and an internationally respected authority of the art of self-creation for over 30 years. We actually have her books here. This is Born, which is her newest book. Then we also have Conscious Creation and Bright Light. Again, this is Born, her newest one. Go check it out. Her daughter is also a author, and we have a couple of her books here too. Dee has a live radio show titled Conscious Creation with more than 500 episodes, and she conducts monthly webinars on the subject. She has taught in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and China. Dee, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's great to be here, baby.
What's Under the Bed would not exist without you. There was an incident that shook my confidence early on, and I scrapped the show for nearly a year. Danielle Harris is a friend, and she told you what happened. You sent me a wonderful video message encouraging me to follow my dream. So I did, and yours is my 12th interview now. Thank you so much.
Good on you. You know, life knocks all of us down. Life, you know, shoots us surprises, takes away our confidence. It's whether you get back up and what you do with it that really matters.
Oh,
so good for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before the influence of movies, what scared you the most as a child? Did you have a fear of the dark, a monster under the bed, or something like that?
I had a huge fear of the dark and monsters in my closet. Almost every night, my mom or dad, I had a big walk-in closet in my room. Almost every night, one of them had to come in and walk me to the back of that closet. Finally, they just ended up leaving the light on for me. So yeah, I was really afraid of the dark, and my brother would babysit me when they'd go out, and he was under strict orders not to ever allow me to watch any horror movies or anything. So one night, he was taking care of me, and he let me watch The Wife of Frankenstein. Well, to make a long story very short, I ended up sleeping with my brother for a month and a half. My mom said, I told you not to, you did, so now you get to take care of her.
Many kids are first introduced to horror through children's stories and fairy tales like The Juniper Tree or Hansel and Gretel. You actually played Lilith in a retelling of Hansel and Gretel in 2013. Was there a particular story that scared you the most as a child?
Like I said, I wasn't allowed to watch too much as a child, but I can tell you as an adult, my dog's going crazy in the other room, sorry. The Exorcist would be my scariest film, I think.
Pearson in my audience may wonder why I have a poster of E.T. on a horror show. The scene when Elliot first encounters E.T. in the shed is terrifying for many young kids. Were there any children's movies that were unintentionally scary for you, like The Flying Monkeys and Wizard of Oz, or that scene, for example?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Were there any children's movies that were unintentionally scary for you, like The Flying Monkeys and Wizard of Oz, or the scene where Elliot finds E.T., for example?
You mean as a child or as an adult?
As a child.
You know, the movies that frighten me the most are the movies that hurt animals. I'm a huge animal lover, always have been. I was devastated when we watched Old Yeller, for example. I mean, really devastated to the point of inconsolable. So those things were actually more frightening to me than any of the Disney-esque movies, cartoon things and stuff like hurting animals. And so of course I ended up doing Cujo. And when they brought me Cujo, I said, look, I have to have a production meeting to make sure how these animals are going to be taken care of, to make sure that none of these animals are ever harmed, that they are, you know, really well watched after. And I'm telling you, those dogs were better taken care of than I was. Carl Miller even slept in the barn with them. That's how protective he was. And they were all trained to go after toys. So for them, it was just one big fun game.
You were born Deanna Bowers and raised in Kansas City, Kansas.
Yep.
I've read one of your fondest memories is dancing with your father while watching Hit Parade, and he'd say, "Button Nose, you're so talented, you could be on that show someday."
Yep.
Can you tell me about this picture?
Yes, my dad worked for Dell Comics, which was a subsidiary of Disney. And so somehow he conjured me up being the Dell Comic Queen. And so when any of the Disney people or Mr. Disney himself would come to Kansas City, I would welcome them with my little banner and my little crown. I remember riding with Gene Autry on his horse around the stadium. So yeah, I was the Dell Comic Queen with Walt Disney.
In addition to Dell Comics, I believe you were also the Imperial Margarine Princess at eight years old. Your mother was a community theater actor and your first acting teacher. You wanted to be a dancer, a movie star, and Miss America when you were young. You began modeling and entering pageants at an early age. Didn't you meet Debbie Bryant in the 1966 Miss America in high school? Oh,
sure. Yeah. I absolutely did. She was lovely. She was beautiful. You know, and I didn't enter a lot of beauty pageants. Some, maybe 2 or 3, but I did a lot of readings, what we would now call monologues. And I would perform around Kansas City for the mayor and the music clubs. And so I was modeling since the time I was 3 years old. So I was groomed. I was groomed to be a performer, a creator. of some kind. And, you know, I started out as a dancer. That's what I really wanted to be. And my teacher, my German teacher, who was a prima ballerina, said to me, I'm going to do you a big favor. You will always be good. You will never be great. If you want to be great, go do something else. So I went, all right, I'll go act. And here I am. But I sure have used my dance training a lot in my acting.
You called your paternal grandmother Grambo. Was she the same grandmother who you woke up in the middle of the night and said something's wrong at grandma's house? Can you tell us that story?
Yes. My maiden name, my given name was Bowers. So I called her Gram Bow.
Gram Bow, okay.
Yes. And I can see how you'd think it would be Grambo, because it's spelled that way. And yes, Gram Bow, my mom had to work all the time. We were very poor. So my mom was away at work. Grandma picked me up from school, sometimes made my dinner. Usually mom was home in time to do that. Grandma made all my clothes, all my formals for me because we couldn't afford to go buy them. And, you know, I started channeling at a very early age. And I think a lot of creative people do, and all children do. All children, you know, we call them their imaginary friends, but they're really connecting to energy on the other side. So I woke up one night and I said, something's wrong at grandma's house. And I went in and woke my mom up, and God bless my mother, who had to be at work at 7 a.m. She got up and she called and grandma didn't answer. So we got in the car and we drove over there, and the cat had gotten up and turned all the burners on. And so gas was coming out. Who knows if she would have been okay by morning. But you know, God love my mother. How many mothers would look at an 8-year-old kid and go, all right, honey, I'll get up out of bed, out of a dead sleep, and go over and we'll check on this hunch that you might have, you know, but she did, and she was in jeopardy. And yeah, I had a lot of experiences like that when I was younger.
So let's cover high school real quick. You were head cheerleader. The school colors were red and white, and the Bulldogs were the team. This is you.
That's me, baby. You have really done your research, dude.
Thank you. Who was Big Red?
Big Red was our school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Big Red was Wyandotte High School, and that's, you know, kind of how we were known as in the high school, you know, genre, was we were Big Red. And
so it wasn't who, it was what.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. It was the entity of Wyandotte High School itself.
All right.
Yeah. You know, I was head cheerleader, and I got to the end of my senior year still not understanding football. I mean, to me, it looked like everybody just went, let's run into each other. So my good friend, who was co-captain, said, all right, call this cheer D. We all laughed about it. We had fun with it. Nobody ratted me out either. I was a great cheerleader, though. I was a great cheerleader.
So in addition to cheerleader, you were in the drama club, a girls' league representative, honor thespian, student director of the KC's National Honor Society, worked on the Pantograph school paper, a member in the Spanish and sociology clubs, Quill and Scroll, you performed in plays, you played the violin in the high school symphony orchestra, and you were crowned homecoming queen while the band played Let Me Call You Sweetheart.
Do you have my yearbook? Is that where you got all this? Huh?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Yes, on all those things. Yes, I was a busy girl. And again, you know, I was kind of born, I just have to create. If I'm creating, I'm happy, right? And also, my home life was so torrential a lot of the time with my dad and his challenges with alcohol and everything, that school was where I could feel powerful and feel like I had control. And high school for me was a really, really special place and a special time.
So can you still play violin? I know you played it in high school.
I'm sure if I picked it up, I could play a little bit, but you know, I mean, I can read music, and what you don't use, you lose. And at some point, I just had to decide, okay, what am I going to focus on, right? And I played first violin in second violins, which is pretty far down the ladder if you understand it. And yeah, it was the one thing I was willing to let go of. Not dancing, not acting, not writing, not teaching. Yeah, but yeah, the violin, yeah, went the way of better things.
We have a question that we ask musicians, and technically you're a musician since you played violin. Do you believe more songs are written about love, lust, or heartbreak?
Well, I think they're all kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
Usually with love, at some point in our life comes heartbreak. Usually with love, hopefully, comes lust. And I mean, I think there's probably more songs written about heartbreak than love, which is sad because you can't have the heartbreak without the love. So yeah, interchangeable would be my answer.
So teenagers are dealing with bullying, COVID lockdowns, and active shooter drills. Do you believe horror movies can help kids cope with these real life horrors?
Yes, I do. If you Google positive effects of watching horror films, you will be very surprised at the studies. That's why, for example, every Disney cartoon film has an evil witch or an evil sorcerer, or because it gives a child an opportunity to work through their fears in a safe environment. We're doing exactly the same thing in a horror film. Now, I'm talking about a true horror film. I'm not talking about a slasher film or revenge films. I'm talking about, you know, horror films with monsters. Our brain knows, and even Jason and people like that, our brain knows that they're not real, that they're not real life, right? I actually just turned down a very nice offer to do a film because I thought it was all focused on violence. And I don't think we need to put more violence, as in people violently going after each other in anger and hatred. I think we have to be responsible not to put a lot of that out into the world.
So you graduated from Kansas University with a degree in theater education and taught high school for a year before striking out for New York in 1977.
Yep.
What happened with Hal Prince in the New York Times?
Well, in the library, we got the New York Times at the school where I taught. And in the New York Times was this article that Hal Prince, who was the biggest producer on Broadway at the time, was looking for an unknown to star in A Little Night Music. So I wrote him this very cheesy letter about, oh, just think, Mr. Prince, a new kid from Kansas. Just think of all the press you could get. It was so cheesy. And I had my brother's friend who took pictures for the school newspaper come over and take a even cheesier picture of me. And I sent it off to Hal Prince. And 3 weeks later, Mr. Prince's secretary called me and said, Mr. Prince would like to fly you to New York to audition. And I had been planning on going to New York. So I had already bought a ticket. And I said, oh, that's great. What day does he need me there? Well, it was the day that I was arriving in New York. And yep, the day I arrived in New York. And I said to her, oh my gosh, that's great. Mr. Prince doesn't even have to spend the money to buy me a ticket. I already have one. You know, I was so naive. He would have brought me in first class and the whole thing, right? So the day I arrived in New York City, I took all my belongings, put them in a cab, said, here, can you take it to this address? They all got there. And I went to Rockefeller Center, got down to the last 5 girls in the dancing and the acting. And then his assistant said, all right, Mr. Prince would like to hear you sing now. And I went, oh, I didn't know we had to sing. She said, well, dear, it is a musical. So Mr. Prince yells out, it's okay, honey, sing happy birthday. And the accompanist said, what key, honey? And I went, somewhere in the middle. Needless to say, I did not get the part, but I felt really powerful getting down to the last 5 girls.
Did you ever run into Hal Prince again?
I did not.
Would you tell me how you landed an acting role by baking cookies?
Yeah. When I first came out to LA, it was very hard to get on the lots to meet all the casting directors. So I did what all good Midwestern girls do. I baked cookies and I wrapped them up in cellophane and tied them with ribbons and went to the guard gate. And I said, hi, I've got to deliver. He said, oh, okay, go on through. So I spent the day delivering cookies to each of the casting directors. And the last casting director was Reuben Cannon, who was the head of casting. And he came out and he went, oh, chocolate chip cookies, I love them. Come on in, let's talk. While I was in there, he got a call from the set that the waitress, who was supposed to say 5 lines, was really sick and the scene was up next. What were they to do? He covered the phone. He said, what size do you wear? I said, what size do you need? He sent me down, and that was my first film part in LA.
The Hills Have Eyes was filmed in the desert where it was blazing hot during the day and very cold at night. The cast shared the same trailer and the bathroom always broke. Wes Craven is one of my favorite filmmakers. He passed away in 2015. Since I can't interview him, I hope to collect stories as I interview people who knew him. This way I can gather these stories in one place and have them in lieu of an interview. Is there a story you can share about him?
You know, I'm not sure anybody really knew Wes from an actor perspective. I can tell you he was gentle and he was quiet. You know, he, like me, started out as a teacher. He was a professor. And so in this crazy, mixed up, weird shoot of The Hills Have Eyes was this very stable, very quiet, very focused director.
You had a part on an episode of the television series Chess called Death Watch. You found a box of two dozen long stem red roses when you returned home from the set one night. Who sent you the roses?
Oh, that would have been the guy that ended up being my husband for 18 years before he passed, Christopher Stone. And you know, when we first started working together early in the week, I mean, he was a very established actor, so he would try to direct me. And I would go, you know, Chris, I got this, Rudy, I got this. So at the end of the shoot, as we're driving back to our dressing rooms, he found out that I had been the guest star on Lou Grant, where I played a hooker. And he went, oh my God, that was you? That was you? I called my wife in. I'm divorced now, but I called my wife in and I said, you got to look at this girl. This girl's going to be a big star. By the time I got home, there were 24 red roses. Now, you have to understand, that's back at a time when everybody had an answering service. The answering service was never supposed to give out any of your personal information, ever. But Christopher could get blood out of a turnip, and he got my address and my phone number and called me that night and asked me out. I said, I'm sorry, I can't, I've got plans Friday night, but I could do Saturday night. He said, oh, well, I've got a card game that the first Saturday of, I said, well, call me again sometime, we'll see. And he didn't skip a beat. He said, that's all right. I'm gonna skip my card game. I'll pick you up at 7. And that was it. We fell in love. He tried to get me to marry him every weekend from then on. Finally, after 9 months, I said yes. And he's the father of my beautiful daughter, Gabrielle.
What was the special gift you gave him for Christmas one year?
I added his name, Stone, to my professional name. I actually gave him my new SAG card that said Dee Wallace Stone on it. Now I can't get anybody to take it off.
A role on the series, Lou Grant led to a part in the hit movie 10, which helped you land the lead in Joe Dante's werewolf classic, The Howling. Christopher Stone would co-star with you in this and later in the movie Cujo. He's excellent in both films. There's a lot of talk about safety recently in the wake of the tragedy on the set of Rust. Did a gun accidentally go off on the Howling?
Yes, it did. And we were in rehearsal and somebody thought it would be a lot of fun to put a blank in the gun. It was never, I want to be sure and say this, it was never pointed at anybody. It was pointed out where the werewolves were supposed to be. But even in rehearsal, an actor is getting into the emotion and the heightened awareness, especially in a dramatic scene like that. And when that gun went off, they lost me for 2 hours. I was hysterical. And it was a good thing Chris was on the set, but he was as pissed off as I was frightened. You know, it's just not okay. And I was taught very early in my career, when you work with a gun, one person handles that gun. One person handles that gun. They bring it to you, they open it, they show you there's nothing in it, they close it, they hand it to you. As soon as you're finished with the scene, you don't hand it to anybody but that one person. And that's the protocol that's supposed to be followed.
Moving on from that. There's so many great interviews given about E.T. So we will touch on it briefly. First, E.T. was released on June 11th, 1982, and this interview will air on June 11th, 2022. Exactly 40 years. I'm very excited about that.
Staggering, huh?
Yeah, thank you. Your method of acting created magic in your performance. Can you tell how the "He Hates Mexico" line came about?
Yes. The way Stephen directed the kids was really magical. He would whisper things. A lot of times the rest of us didn't know that line was coming. And when he said I can't call him, he's in Mexico with Sally, I took such a hit in my heart, and I could feel the tears come up. And I literally had the thought as Mary, I don't want the kids to see me cry. So I excused myself and got up. And Stephen came over after we cut and said, "Dee, why did you get up and leave?" And I explained to him what happened. And in that minute, he brought everybody in, asked them to build an extension of the set with a sink where I could go over to the sink, put my dishes in it, turn around into that big close-up and say, "He hates Mexico." And it all just happened. You know, that's the sign of a really brilliant director, when he sees a moment like that. First of all, he gives us the room to follow those instincts. And from those instincts, he sees a moment that's magical, that should be expanded. And it's happened with pretty much every great director I've ever worked with.
There was an explosion of latchkey kids in the 1970s as couples divorced and mothers would work to support their families. I believe E.T. was one of the first times a single working mother was represented in a movie.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons the movie resonated the way it did is because it looked like so many families at the time. Either their moms were like Mary or they wished their moms were like Mary. E.T. could never have been the global phenomenon it was without your iconic performance.
Thank
What
you.
I'm saying is it's not that you were lucky to be in the movie was lucky to have you.
Thank you, Donnie. I appreciate that. But I am lucky to be in that movie. That movie just transcends something, and it reaches into our hearts. And you know, it's been around as long as it has been because it changes people's lives. It moves you in a way that we are rarely moved with the truth anymore. And I have so many stories of people whose lives have really been changed for the better because of this film.
Your performance as Donna Trenton in Cujo is Oscar worthy. Stephen King even calls it the best performance from any of his movie adaptations. Why do you think the Academy dismisses movies like Cujo?
I don't know. I think maybe it goes back to the 50s. I really don't know. You would think that they would just weigh in on the weight of the performance, no matter what genre the film is. But for some reason, horror films have been looked down on. That's kind of changing a little bit now with The Quiet Place and things like that. I don't know. It's really, really unfortunate.
So, my dad grew up with Saint Bernards.
Oh, look at those puppies.
Yeah, they're adorable.
Oh, the puppies.
So we like to call them my great grand dogs because they're not my dogs, but they're my dad's dogs.
Yeah.
Cujo is a favorite movie in the family. Critters is too. This is my critter named Buddy. I named him Buddy when I first got him, and I love him so much.
Cool.
I should point out, 2 months ago on April 11th, it marked the 35th anniversary of Critters. The movie gives several winks to E.T. when a critter devours an E.T. doll, for example.
Yeah.
It was an ambitious project on a low budget with a first-time director. What was the shoot like for you?
Oh, Critters. Critters was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun shooting. It was kind of a tough shoot because a lot of night shoots, but it was a great cast, great director. I mean, it could have been a real challenge, but we just had fun. And, there weren't any like ego trips or anything. It was just fun. That's what I remember. It was fun.
So these last questions are going to be more of a rapid fire. Can you tell me about being stuck in an elevator?
Oh yeah, that happened when I did a movie in Poland. And it was actually an open air shaft that stopped halfway down and the light went out and everybody started screaming in Polish and I freaked out.
I'm sorry, just the backstory of that question is funny to me. We were talking to the Terrifier people, and they mentioned that story, and we were like, "Oh, we gotta add that."
Yeah, it was pretty freaky.
I guess so. It's terrifying.
I mean, we were halfway down a salt mine.
Ooh,
and I was the only one that spoke English, so everybody was screaming in Polish, and I didn't. I have claustrophobia from that moment. Little tiny bit.
I believe you have been in 5 movies directed by Rob Zombie, including Munsters, which just wrapped. Do you prefer fast zombies or slow zombies?
I prefer Rob Zombie.
Is using a Thigh Master every day one of your secrets to staying in shape?
Oh, I used to. Now I work out with a trainer. Boy, where do you get all this information about me, huh?
That's my secret.
My Lord, secret. You must have gone back 30 years researching this stuff.
Well, do you have a peace sign tattoo, and where is it located?
Oh, now where did you get that? Yes, I have a peace sign tattoo. All of the women got together when we went back for my stepdad's memorial. And my daughter said, I think we all ought to bond together and get a tattoo. So we did. And it's on my right cheek. Not this one.
So is it true you paid someone $10 for their candy bar? Apparently it was on an airplane.
That I don't remember, dude.
All right.
That one I
All
don't
right.
remember. I would not put it
Okay.
past me. If I was really hungry, I wouldn't put it past me.
So this last question is a Sophie's choice. Two must die so that one may live. Sally Field's performance in Norma Ray, Meryl Streep's performance in Bridges of Madison County, or Meryl Streep's performance in Sophie's Choice.
Norma Ray.
Just, is there anything you want to ask me before we finish? That's it.
I just want to tell you how awesome you are. And what a great freaking interview this has been. So much fun. So much fun finding out that you found out all that stuff about me. I'm in shock, really.
Thank you so much, and we'll let you go now. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.